Hello, everyone. I'm going to continue today with our book, Little Rascal. And when I left off in part 3, so today is part 4, remember Sterling had to make a cage for Rascal. And he tried to put him in there. And then when he went out and Rascal realized that he was locked in, oh, Rascal was having a fit. And when Sterling went to bed, he just couldn't sleep because Rascal was so upset and he was crying to be let out. So the last paragraph where we left off on part 3 was, after a while, I couldn't stand it any longer. So I went out and unhooked the door and brought him to bed with me. We slept fitfully, touching each other again and again throughout the night for reassurance. So let's continue. When the school bell finally rang through the crisp air on a bright morning early in October, I hurried off with my new pencils and books. I always liked the opening of school, and this year it was particularly exciting because I was entering junior high. I was only sorry to have to lock Rascal securely in his cage during school hours, but Wowzer, remember that's the dog, kept him company just outside the fence, and Donnybrook whickered softly from the nearby paddock. My most interesting teacher that year was Miss Whalen, who loved biology as my mother had loved it. She caught our attention the very first day by asking us about our pets. Almost every boy or girl in class had a dog or cat or pony or canary, but I was the only one with a raccoon. Miss Whalen asked me if I would bring Rascal to school on the following Monday morning. I combed and brushed him until his fur shone, and I polished his nameplate with silver polish. Rascal sat politely on Miss Whalen's desk, examining a small glass paperweight. I was very proud of his good behavior. As you can see, Miss Whalen began, raccoons are curious. Then she wrote on the blackboard, raccoon, she put a dash, an Indian word meaning he who scratches. Slammy Stillman asked if raccoons scratch because they have fleas, and everyone laughed. Miss Whalen rapped lightly for order, and I raised my hand. Yes, Sterling. Rascal is perfectly clean. He goes swimming every day, I said, and he never had a flea in his life. I think, said Miss Whalen, that the Indians meant that raccoons scratch and dig for turtle eggs and other food along the shore. So here's a picture of Rascal on Miss Whalen's desk, and there's Sterling. Then she went on to tell us many things that even I did not know. How raccoons live in every state of the Union and how they have 2 to 6 kits every spring. Those are babies. They call raccoon babies kits. Raccoons are also called wash bears, she said. Doesn't Rascal look like a little bear? She placed a shallow laboratory pan containing perhaps an inch of water on her desk, and in the water she placed a crayfish. Rascal responded immediately. Gazing off through a window, he ran his hands all over the bottom of the enamel pan. Suddenly his body stiffened for a pounce, and 2 seconds later he had his prey fast in his grip and was washing it happily in preparation for his feast. Everyone in the class wanted to pet my small raccoon. As I stood beside him, the boys and girls came by in single file. Some of the girls pretended to be a little afraid. Slammy was the last one in line, and he slouched up, shifty-eyed and sneering, though I was watching for trouble. I was a moment too late. Just as he reached the raccoon, Slammy stretched a heavy rubber band and snapped Rascal in the face. Was that nice of Slammy? That was not nice. Very rarely before had I heard Rascal scream of rage, but now I heard it. A piercing, fight to the death cry. A split second later, he sank his fine, sharp teeth in Slammy's fat hand. Slammy yelled until you could have heard him in the assembly hall. He danced around, shaking his hand and shouting, "Mad coon, mad coon, you got to shoot him now, mad coon." Miss Whalen was icy cold. "Here, Slammy, use some of this iodine on your little bite." Now, everyone, was that nice of Slammy to do that? That was not nice at all. We don't hurt people's pets. But Slammy was just not a nice little boy. So far in the story, he hasn't been nice. Then she turned to me sympathetically. "I'm sorry, Sterling, but you will have to keep your raccoon in his cage day and night for the next 2 weeks. If he should show signs of rabies, we would still have time to get treatments for Slammy." "But Rascal isn't rabid," I protested. "I know, but we can't take any chances." No longer could Rascal join me after school while I raked leaves or sold my Saturday evening posts. But I spent every hour that I could in his cage, convinced that if he had to be a prisoner, I would too. Slammy's punctured hand healed almost immediately, and in 2 weeks, Rascal and I could frisk again through the autumn weather and the crimson maple leaves. Late in October, Spanish influenza, that's like the flu, which had swept Europe and the eastern states, hit Brailsford Junction, killing more of our citizens than did the war. Mine was one of the milder cases, but my father was worried. He bundled me into the car and, with Rascal beside me, took me to the North Homestead, to the great brick farmhouse where he had spent his boyhood. The farm was now run by my father's brother, Fred, his gentle wife, Lily, and their 3 teenage boys. "Why, Sterling, are you sick?" Aunt Lily asked with concern. "Just a touch of influenza," my father said. I thought that perhaps. "Why, of course, he needs my care. Now come in for a second breakfast, toast and coffee, and it would take me only a minute to fix ham and eggs." Aunt Lily had never been known to refuse a sick child or an orphaned lamb. Sounds like Aunt Lily's pretty nice. She was gentle and tender as my mother had been. She soon had me well enough to ride one of the Shetland ponies, with Rascal sitting in front of me as he had on the wooden steeds of the merry-go-round. So he's riding the Shetland pony, and you see Rascal sitting on the pony, and then you see the cow, there's a chicken, and there's a collie, a dog. As my health returned, Rascal and I explored the whole farm, the great dairy barn and hay mow, the grain bins, tobacco sheds where the brown leaves were drying, and best of all, the honey house, where Rascal discovered that honey is almost as delicious as sweet corn. All too soon, the day came when I must go home and return to school. It happened to be my 12th birthday, and Aunt Lily roasted a plump young turkey with hickory nut stuffing. For dessert, we had a choice of cold pumpkin pie with whipped cream or hot mince pie from the oven. Rascal and I ate more than our share of every dish on the table. On November 11, 1918, the armistice, ending 4 years of bloody struggle, was signed in France. Armistice was an agreement. The war to end war had been won. There would never be another conflict, or so we believed in that far off and innocent time. Rascal and I helped celebrate the joyous event. I wove red, white, and blue crepe paper ribbons through the spokes of my bicycle wheels, put Rascal in the basket, and joined the wild and jubilant crowd. The fire whistle blew continuously, and every church and school bell in town joined the chorus. I rang my bicycle bell to add to the din. In the afternoon, everyone went home, tired but happy, and I began oiling my traps for the muskrat season ahead. Rascal, who was always curious about everything, came over to sniff and feel the traps, and a terrible thought slowed my fingers. I opened out the illustrated catalog sent to trappers by the St. Louis for buyers. There, in full color on the very first page, was a handsome raccoon trying desperately to pull his paw from the jaws of a trap. I, of course, had never trapped a raccoon, but how could anyone have the cruelty to mutilate the sensitive hands of an animal like Rascal? I picked up my pet and hugged him to me in remorse. So see, there they are in the brown barn, and there's the trap. I burned my fur catalogs in the furnace and hung my traps in the barn, never to use them again. Men had stopped killing other men in France, and on that day, I signed my own permanent treaty with the animals and birds of the world. So that was the end of our story for today, and that was the end of the section Autumn. So next time we'll start on winter. So I hope you enjoyed that. We are finding about more about the adventures of Sterling with Rascal, and I thought it was so cute. He took him to school. Slammy, that wasn't nice, but at least Rascal had fun, and there was only one child who wasn't nice to him. So thanks for tuning in today, and have a great day.